Sometimes you got to do some tracking, find out what's going on. Oh, it is in fact a Swedish car. It is in fact a Volvo S60 T8 in 2025, guys. And this is a beautiful thing because it's a car. It ain't no SUV. This is a sedan. It's a sedan that has 455 horsepower. And it's also economically very friendly and as well as environmentally friendly because it's a plug-in hybrid. We have a 2-liter turbocharged engine and then a big old electric motor and all-wheel drive. So this snow, which is often seen in places like, oh, I don't know, Sweden, you can just propel yourself right along in great comfort and great safety because it's a Volvo. Come with me and enjoy this car because I certainly did. What's in a logo anyway? Well, all kinds of things. But in Volvo's case, we got an arrow pointing to the future. And what they're doing is they're going to a more electrified type of propulsion system on all their vehicles with the idea that pretty soon there won't be any more internal combustion passenger cars from Volvo. They'll all be electric, or so they're thinking. That's what they're thinking. But in the interim, you have a mixture of gasoline engines and electric motors, also known, as we have all learned over the last 20 years, a hybrid. And this is a plug-in hybrid, meaning that it has a larger battery and has the capacity to go further purely on electricity as opposed to a mix of gas and electric. Of course, the conditions have to be right. Right now in the snow, they're really not the best situation for electric power. However, it don't matter because it's a very enjoyable ride, period. And it also has something else a lot of people will find very appealing. 455 horsepower. Wow! That's a lot for a 4,300 pound car. And I'll tell you something else about it. It's all Volvo, meaning it has a lot of the latest safety devices and construction. In addition, you got to remember something. We have all these new things that are helping us avoid collisions, which is fantastic. That's great to avoid a collision. That's the #1 way of survival. Surviving a crash is not having one. But Volvo has also been on the forefronts for many, many years in terms of what happens if you do hit something. Their ability to absorb a crash and keep the passenger safe is pretty amazing and has been, like I say, for many years now. That's been a real big part of how they build their cars and how they engineer their cars. And this S60 T8 is in fact a perfect example of that because it has a lot of the latest stuff. Even though in some ways the interior of the car is not dated, but it's old compared to a lot of the newer stuff from Volvo, especially their all-electric offerings. But I think a lot of people will like that because it's a lot more familiar and it has a lot more conventional control surfaces, like these things called buttons, than some of the newer stuff does, although it's pretty heavily dependent upon their touchscreen. And we'll get into that in great detail. But before we do, let's look at some of the nuts and bolts of this thing because this has a very, very interesting propulsion system. As I mentioned before, it is a plug-in hybrid, so that gives us the ability to go long distance, like in optimal conditions about 41 miles according to Volvo, on pure electric power, but you always have that gas engine that's turbocharged, that's ready to rip loose whenever you need it. So without further ado, let us examine under the bonnet. For those of you who have come along with me on these various reviews for a while now, you may have noticed something. One of my favorite things about the Volvo engine compartment is the hood, because look at how much it opens. I tell you, it's like one of them anacondas or something. It's able to dislocate its jaw in order to provide plenty of access to the engine compartment. And that does two things. Not only is it easier to get to stuff, but it's also great because it lets in a whole lot of light if you need to poke around underneath here. And it's an interesting place to poke around because we have our 4-cylinder engine right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is mounted transversely. And look at this hair. This is all part of our engine stabilization in order to keep things nice and smooth, which it does. It's a very smooth running engine. Now back here, if you look back in this area here, here's our intake area. This is where the fuel mixture and everything goes in there. And in the front part of the engine is where we have our exhaust and our turbocharging, which is down underneath here. You take out these little star-shaped bolts here and you can remove the engine cover if you want. And you can see all this stuff clearer, but I can look right down in here and see our turbocharging array, which is, in a lot of ways, it makes sense to me from a service standpoint. If you do have to get into your turbocharging, you can get to it easier if it's in the front of the car as opposed to the back. I mean, we have some vehicles right now, since everybody's going with 4-cylinder turbocharged engines, it seems like, where you practically have to take the engine compartment apart to get to the turbocharger because it's so packed in there. This is a little better situation when they have the turbocharger mounted up front, and there's a few that do it, but not many. Most people put it in the back near the firewall. So food for thought for those of you who need something to eat mentally. So where's the air come in? Well, it comes in right here. Here's our air box. It flows all the way down. That's one of our air intakes right there. But we also have air going into our turbocharging system. So all this stuff, all this plumbing that you see down in here, there it is all connected to everything as far as your turbocharging right in here. That down there is probably part of your electric drive system. Excuse me, as is this over here. This is all part of your electric motor system. What do we have out back? Do we have one motor? Do we have two motors? Well, later on in this review, I will show you what's going on in the rear end and how that drive system actually functions when we go into our all-wheel drive mode. So, where's our belts and stuff? Our main serpentine belt is mounted here. This, for lack of a better term, is the front of your engine. And then we have the middle of your engine. And then we have your electrical side right over here. And tucked in with all of this, like I say, is your turbocharging. And what's our numbers again? Well, the motor itself puts out 143 horsepower. And then using the 18.8 kilowatt battery, which I assume is lithium ion, it doesn't really say, to power the electric motor, you get a total amount of the turbocharged inline 4 is 312 horsepower. What did I tell you? I'm lying. Don't listen to me. The engine itself, the turbocharged 4 is 312 horsepower, and the electric motor is 143 horsepower. So your total output is 455 horses, all going into an 8-speed automatic transmission. Like I said, a whole lot of power. And when you have a situation where you have an electric motor and turbocharging, it's really nice because the electric motor aspect of things can help smooth out the lower part of the rev range. A lot of times turbochargers take a little bit of spin up in order to start really doing their thing and really boosting the engine output. And to help that along at the lower RPMs, you have this beautiful electric motor. And that's how all the cars you see that have a hybrid system and a turbocharged engine, that's one of the advantages of having that electric side of things, is to fill in that gap. Even though turbochargers are so much better than they used to be in terms of spooling up really quickly to give you that instant rush of power, much, much lower in the RPM range. Now, if you look down there, all the way down in there, we have an intercooler because you can't have turbocharging without an intercooler, else you're kind of wasting your time a little bit, because the air, when it's compressed, gets so much hotter and it becomes less dense, and then it kind of negates a lot of your turbocharging advantage of compressing the air and increasing the amount of air that gets into the cylinders. So you got to have an intercooler to cool it back down after it has been compressed, and that's what that does, and that's where that's at. That's out front here, where all your other radiators and things for everything else go. But once again, look at that incredible hood on that thing. It's just mind-boggling. Boggles my mind, and it's very, very lightweight. Whee! It's probably aluminum, I would think, because that's how we do things. Hear the squeaking of the snow as I walk. It's pretty amazing. It's only about 2 inches of snow, but it does make things a tad slick, I have to say. But anyway, that is your hood and your basic transportation. Like I say, the charge port, which you saw earlier, I think, is right here in the front on the driver's side. And yeah, and in the back on the right side, on the passenger side, is where we have our fuel intake. So you will never confuse the two, like when you've driven 1,000 miles and you're exhausted and it's late at night and you really just want to get to the hotel. So, and now we shall examine the rest of the exterior. Here we have your 235/40 R19, 19-inch wheel Pirellis on here, these all-season Pirellis, which seem to do pretty good in this season, which is winter. They also have a very substantial brake caliper and brake rotor on these things. So with 455 horsepower on tap, you got to have some good stopping power, and this definitely does. And it also has, of course, regenerative braking to help charge the battery for the electric motor when you're coasting or braking. So, and the wheels, they look like wheel covers, don't they? But they're not. These are aluminum wheels, and you can judge by yourself. I'm not thrilled on the styling on them, but overall, if you look at the overall package, it looks good. So it works. It's just, I don't know. I find them dramatic. They're very dramatic. Our wheelbase, 113.1 inches. And as you can see, the rear door is not huge, and it's because this is a compact after all. But once you get through that door, you have a surprising amount of room for 2 people in that back seat. It's actually quite commodious. Not huge, mind you, but acceptable for full-grown adults to be comfortable back there. Now as we turn the corner and come back here, here we have this weird thing that's called a trunk. Remember those? Look at there. And there is our charging cable for charging. And here is the cat. How's it going, Mr. Lewis? Good to see you. And we have a surprising amount of room in this trunk. It does a very nice job. You could definitely, with yourself and 3 passengers, you could definitely have room for all your luggage back here. I'm impressed with the size of this, especially when you get to the fact that there's a lithium battery somewhere. And I think that's part of what we have a flat repair kit. Of course, we don't have a spare. I wish we did, but we don't. But somewhere up in here, I think actually they mount the lithium battery further forward. I don't know. But this is a very roomy trunk, and there is our handy household cable, or wherever you happen to be. If you're got a long run to your neighbors, you can just pull up next to their house and plug in and take their electricity if you wish. I mean, I can't stop you from doing that. Especially since electricity is getting expensive. Okay, so as you can see, it has a very, very traditional Volvo look, but at the same time, it's also a very handsome sedan. And it's also very aerodynamic, and subsequently, it's also very quiet at speed. They've done a great job with this car. And I'm just so happy to see a car. You know, the American manufacturers basically don't build sedans anymore. I don't understand why that is. The rest of the manufacturers in the world are continuing to do it. But for some reason, the American manufacturers think everybody ought to be driving around in an SUV. So Go figure. I'm not sure what that's all about. But the all-wheel drive system on it, by the way, since we are in snow after all, has so far been very, very good. I haven't had any incidents at all. It seems to propel the car very, very nicely. So there you go. And with no further ado, let's take a look at the interior. So here we are inside our S60 plug-in hybrid, our Ultra, as we like to call it. And Volvo, like I've always said, does things a little different from everybody else. But what they do that I really like is the quality of their displays are very, very good. They use a very high definition type of screen. And this particular vehicle, the S60, in my opinion, has what I call the older interface system with Volvo. If you look at the newer all-electric Volvos, a lot of them have a much more, I hate to use the word contemporary, but that's what it is, type of system. And there's something very familiar about the older system that we have on this car that I really like. There's still, the way you navigate through all these menus and stuff is still, to me, less than perfect, because you have to spend so much time right here on your center screen in order to access basic things like the heaters on your seats, is if you want to have heated seating, and even the heated steering wheel, you have to go through a bunch of stuff. Drive modes, you have to go through multiple menus in order to get to what you want. And every time you do that, you're distracted. You'll hear me say this more than once on this video, because it's not a Volvo thing. It is a modern automobile thing that I think they're losing the plot completely on. But anyway, here is our instrument cluster, and on our left side, of course, we have a speedometer, which is both digital and analog. You also have the nearest speed limit sign is displayed for you, so you know what the speed limit is. You see more and more of that. You're going to see things like on this car that you have to remember something. This car is largely based and is intimately involved with Google. And Google gives a lot of information to this car, and Google also, and they tell you this at the beginning when you start the car, Google is also taking information from this car and about you also. So that's a trade-off you have to be willing to make. I don't think you have much choice, to be honest with you. These cars are becoming more and more integrated with companies like Google, and why it has so much of the information it does, I don't know. They're all coming back to saying, well, it's all about navigation. I don't think it is. I think it's about a lot of different things, but that's a subject for another day. On the Volvo, though, you do have a lot of Google integration, and that's good from the mapping side of things, unless you want to find the Gulf of Mexico, and you'll end up with this thing called the Gulf of America. What the? Doesn't exist. But anyway, let's look at some of our menu choices here. On our steering, on our right side of our steering, is kind of how we navigate through a lot of the display stuff on your instrument cluster. For example, I just hit that button and I made it go away. I hit it again and there's our map. Now I hit up and down here, what happens? Well, this is actually volume for the stereo system, which I currently have muted. And then if we go left and right, it's the same sort of thing. It's picking a channel. So this is like an audio system deal right here. So how do we get to stuff like, I want to go to trip odometer and stuff like that? Well, if you hold this down, or touch it lightly, or do something, gosh, I just did this. Oh, wait a minute. This isn't this. It's this. See, you have your thumb center here, and there we go. There's our trip computer, and you can you scroll in this? You can reset, and you can close, which I'll close now. But when you do this, you can't really do anything else as far as I can find. You would think there might be a whole lot of different things you can access while you're doing that, and there isn't. strange when you think about it. That's the only thing that will give you access to. If you hold it down, nothing happens. It closes. And I was able to reset the trip computer, so I'm happy about that. It also displays your odometer. This car has 2745 on it. But there you go. So you get a choice of your map or nothing. That's pretty much how that works. What else do we have here? We have a reset button here, but I don't know what this actually resets. It's on the end of your turn signal stalk, which is also where you will find your lighting array. And we're currently on automatic with our lighting. And Volvos tend to, right now, like for example, the headlights are on. As you can see, it's nice and bright outside, but the headlights are on because the car wants to have the headlights on. And they're, again, with Volvo's real focus on safety with all their vehicles, and that's been as long as they've been building cars, really. They know that it's much easier to see a vehicle if the lights are on. And that's kind of how daytime running lights were born. But Volvo, I believe, tends to take things a little further than that, than a lot of other manufacturers. In other words, the auto setting, I feel like a Volvo will turn the headlights on faster when it's less dark than compared to a lot of the other manufacturers out there, because that's just the way they do things, and they care about that. So anyway, on our left side, as mentioned, there's your speed information, and in the middle you have a navigation map, and in the right side, instead of having a tachometer, you have basically a power meter. Since you have both an electric motor and an internal combustion engine working in concert, or one or the other, it's telling you basically what's going on in a very, very general sense. Now, see, there's Google there. Up here, this is how much battery capacity we have left, pure battery. We have about 5 miles where the car should, in theory, be able to run on electric power alone. And our range on gasoline is 420 miles. So that's pretty damn good. And if I go back here, let's see here. Oops, sorry, I always get that wrong. It's telling me that currently on this trip I've been getting 97.8 miles per gallon, largely because I started with a full charge on our plug-in hybrid side. So even though it's really, really cold, it's been using the electric motor quite a bit. And that's basically what you need to know about that. Your car is going to be doing all this seamlessly, quietly, without your intervention. In terms of what the switch off is going on between the electric motor and the internal combustion engine. Now, can we do anything with that? Well, we can. If we migrate over here and hit this is our settings, and then go to driving, you will see these are our settings. We have hybrid, power, pure, and constant all-wheel drive. Pure is, of course, the all-electric mode. Power is where you're using the the gas engine quite a bit to maximize power. Hybrid is what it's going to sit on. If you're going on a trip, for example, and you have depleted the electric only range, it will then pop into hybrid mode, and you'll be driving which is essentially a regular hybrid, and it will be recharging the battery through regenerative braking and that sort of thing. So it becomes basically a regular hybrid, and your mileage drops considerably because you no longer have all that battery power there. In order to get your full battery power, you need to, of course, plug the car in. And you also have a constant all-wheel drive mode, which is if you're in really deep snow and stuff like that, you don't want it constantly looking and trying to decide whether or not it should give power to the front or to the back. It'll basically be, what I consider to be a center differential lock, although that's not what it is. But it will, in fact, keep all four wheels purring along for you. Now, below that, we have a thing that always start in drive mode pure. As I mentioned a couple of times with cold weather, the engine may turn on even though you're in pure mode, but the actual propulsion of the vehicle will be electric only. And I think that's what this did. I got 20 something miles out of it. I got probably about 24 miles out of it on all electric. Volvo says you can get up to 41, and I think that's probably 100% accurate, because all the difference in the world happens when you have cold weather, and it reduces the performance of everything. Battery powered cars, internal combustion engine powered cars, everything suffers as far as efficiency when it gets really cold. So anyway, we go further and we have the driver support system, which is pilot assist. And pilot assist includes adaptive cruise control and lane steering. So I have that turned on because it's very, very easy through the controls here for your cruise control, these arrows right here, for going in and out of the mode that will determine whether or not the car is steering itself. And it's real easy to turn that on and off on this car, which is great. Some cars it's a little bit more involved. But if you have it the default position, that when you hit the cruise control button, it will also steer the car. And that's what I've got set on now, but you can turn that off. That's what that's for. Safety assistance, lane keeping. I hate lane keeping. I turn that off. Road sign information. I love road sign information. That's turned on. And ready to drive notification. That's always useful to tell you that the car can be driven. Why not? And then driving dynamics, you have creep and you have steering wheel firmness. This creep is if you drive like a creep, pretty much. Or either that, or I think it has something to do with the, I don't know what creep is, to be honest with you. Turn off what happens. I don't know. I'll look that up for you. I think it has to do with low speed traffic and the adaptive cruise control system, and then it will creep along very slowly if necessary. I don't know. I'll find out. These crazy Swedes, you never know. So that's basically all the adjustments you have in terms of your drive modes and everything else. That's it. What else do we have here in general? Well, you had connectivity, of course, with your Bluetooth and all that stuff. Display lights, locking, display lights, looking wipers, mirrors, locking wipers. I'm sorry. I think that you can lock your wipers in the upright position if you need to change the blades on them, that kind of thing. Profiles, boy, there's nothing I hate more on modern cars than having a profile of the driver, and so that the companies know who's driving and they can advertise accordingly as far as it's more information than they should ever have. Then there's what are all your Google settings here? What does it say? Google Assistant, Password Manager, send feedback, ads, services on this device. Can I turn those off? Reset advertising, delete advertising ID. Apps can no longer delete advertising ID. How about that? I just deleted that. I'm probably going to get in trouble for doing that, but I'm just testing the car. Manage activity controls. Here, you shoot this image on the screen, and it will automatically go to your Google account and everything. See, I hate all that stuff. If you want that on your car, fine. I think it should be something you should 100% opt in on, maybe even pay extra for, because I think there's way too much interaction of these vehicles nowadays with companies like Google. So what else do we have here? Well, the seat adjustments are fantastic on this car. You can do everything you need to do. You have lumbar support. You have everything. And see, here we go. That's what I was trying to do. Here is this forward thingy right chair. And then how about, what happens if I do, what's that do? That doesn't do anything. That's the front bolster that goes up and down. It has its own control. That's interesting. Then you have tilt, and then you have zoom, and it doesn't indicate that. It's just telling you what's going on with that one thing. So, okay, I'm still trying to understand the ways of this vehicle. Something else I'm going to mention right off the bat: the Ultra model, which this is, comes with a like a Harman Kardon or a Bang & Olufsen or something, a real high-tech, high-performance sound system as part of the Ultra package. It's a Harman Kardon, but this has instead a $3,200 option, which is a Bowers and Wilkins sound system. And I think it has like one more speaker. There's like 17 speakers or something in the car. And it has one more than the Harman Kardon does. You know, that's a lot of money to add on to the price for a sound system, when I've never had it listen to a Harman Kardon system in a car that wasn't excellent. But you can send yourself to the moon with this music if you wish. But you'll have to pay another $3,200 to do it, and that's quite a bit, in my view. Okay, so what have we shown? We have shown, here's our cruise control, which I mentioned before. That's how you activate and deactivate. This is how you switch from pilot assist and no pilot assist. And this is, of course, your following distance with your adaptive cruise control. And as mentioned, this is primarily audio connected here. Pardon me. Okay, so the center screen you've pretty much seen. This is how you get to your basics right here. Maps. Again, it has a portrait instead of a landscape mode, which is perfectly good. And the image quality is superb on these maps. So that's one thing you get with the Google tie-in, is you get what should be pretty accurate maps, except for the occasional large bodies of water that are wrong. But other than that, it's great. Now, if I want to go to something like, I want to turn on the seat heaters, like I mentioned before, you have to go into this separate mode to do that. And then, again, every time you have to take your eyes off the road to operate a touchscreen, I don't think that's good, because that's our number one problem I feel like we have with car safety, automobile safety these 2020 thousandths, or whatever the hell it is. I don't understand that. I don't understand your calendars. But during the current period, we have way too much dependence upon these things. And what's our number one problem with driving? People being distracted. So I always have to say something about that, because I really wish the manufacturers would think a little more before they just load everything up onto the touchscreen, because it's not a good idea. And people are crashing their cars and getting killed at rates that are higher than they've been for a long, long time. Why is that? Gee, I don't know. I'm talking on the phone too. Anyway, as we go down here, this is primary sound system oriented right here. And here is your rear windshield defogger, your front. These are nice. These are dedicated switches, so you don't have to go into this menu here and mess with all this. Although you can turn on the defrosters through this, but it's nice that you actually have down here, you actually have a dedicated switch to do that, and you can almost do it by feel, but it's a little tricky, but you can do it by feel. But anyway, that's all that's there. Then we come to this beautiful crystal. This is our shifter. It's electronic in nature, and you just go for reverse, you just go forward, and then you get this beautiful camera, this beautiful wide-angle camera. I'll talk more about the cameras in just a minute. Then you have neutral and drive, and then you have B, which is is primarily designed, I think, to increase the amount of regenerative braking. I'll play with that some and we'll see. I'm fairly certain that's what it is. But where's park? Park, you ask? Right there, you just press that button and you're in park. The engine stop-start, instead of being up in here somewhere, is down here. And that's just the way Volvo likes to do it. You get used to that very quickly. It's not a big problem. Here is your parking brake, which you can engage and disengage, and also your emergency brake. So that's down here. Most people like to put that over here, but Volvo likes to put it right here. kind of makes sense when you think about it, because these are all your drive controls: engine, start, transmission, 8-speed, by the way. That's all right there. So now, next question, Boots, do we have any USB-C ports? Well, yes. Here's some USB-C right here, and here is a 12-volt power port, and that's pretty much it here. I don't think we've got to have I don't see one. I'm always expecting to find a wireless charging system on all these cars, but I don't think this one has it. Oh, there's my hand. Sorry about that. How are you? It's kind of disturbing to me that it doesn't have that, but there you go. Now, our seating, I love this seating because it is not leather. It is not a textile, a simulating leather. It is, in fact, a nice fabric. And one of the things I'll tell you right off the bat, leather seats and even the synthetics that look like leather, if it's really cold out, the seats are really cold until you get the heaters turned on. With fabric, I have discovered that they're not near as cold as leather and faux leather, which is great because it's been really cold lately. But these are really comfortable. As you can see, the seats are very sporty in that they have real strong side bolsters. And overall, the trim level on this car is excellent. They've used a lot of the fabric and a lot of different types of materials. I think this is actual wood right here in the car to just make it overall a very, very classy environment. And it seems to be very well assembled. Although I have quite the rattle up here. And I'm not sure what that is, and I never talk much about things like that because I have no idea what this car has been through as far as other reviewers. And they could have lost something. They could have lost a pin down there. I don't know what. So I haven't, in my experience, Volvos have not been real rattle prone. So I'm not going to say that it's got a genuine rattle in it because it really probably doesn't. Up front, we have our panoramic ceiling on there, and this is how we open and close it. You slide it. I'm not going to open it because it's too cold outside, and of course you have your excellent map lights. And it's really nice, this panorama, because like all panoramas, it tends to lighten the cabin and make it seem roomier, which is always good. All right, vehicle is active, and so are we. Here we go. Now, this is a compact vehicle, so the rear seat, you shouldn't be expecting limo-type characteristics, and you won't. But that's our opening. It's pretty broad, it's pretty good, but not real big, not good for overly large people. You have good, I have to adjust the headrest out here. Oh, yeah, there we go. You have pretty decent leg room for a compact, and you also have heated seats outboard. Now, it says you can sit 3 people here, but look at the size of this tunnel right here. It's huge. I consider this car actually to be more of a 2+2, unless the person sitting in the middle is a diminutive individual or a child, perhaps. How's our windows? Do they go all the way down? Nope. They go down about 90-something%. There are no window shades, but there are excellent map lights, as you can see. You have this hard plastic with a little bit of a net here. It would be kind of hard to get anything of any real thickness in that. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But I do love the fact that you got your own heat back here for your seat. That is very good. Now, how about our armrest? It is very nice. You have a ski-through right there. And you have this. Woo! Look at there. Cup holders. So, by the way, let's examine this further. Very nice level, very nice height to your armrest. So for 2 people, you can be very comfortable back here. The headroom is good. It's still a compact, and it feels like a compact, and looks like a compact, but it's as good as a compact gets, in my opinion, in terms of the amount of room that you have available. So that's all a good thing. So that's the inside of this. And like the front, the workmanship and everything back here is very, very nice. And I do love these cloth seats. Boy, they are very, very nice overall. So that's your Volvo S60 plug-in hybrid interior. Well, we have all-wheel drive, but it's doing a little slipping and sliding on account of there's all this ice and snow on the ground ways. It's fine. It's just fine. It was only slipping because I stopped there for a moment. But we have our all-wheel drive. We are in, I wonder what mode we're in. What's our mode? Can you tell us our mode? Car status? Does that tell us? No, that's not it. It's this. And then it's this. Yes, we're in hybrid mode. Okay. All right. We're not in constant all-wheel drive, which is fine. Got to be careful here because there's some irregularities. Now here's the difficult thing right here, getting over this. See this burn here, and it's going to have to do its thing. Look at that. Look at that. No problem. Wow, it looks like they just repaved this. Because like I mentioned before, they are dead set. Dead set, I tell you, on making sure that there is nothing on the pavement except pavement. I don't even worry about getting the car dirty. That's nice. This snow is less than, let's see, it's about 8 hours old, 8 to 10 hours since it snowed. And they've already got it all off the road, which is impressive in its way, I must say. I'm mildly impressed, except for what I'm impressed with, all the salt's gone. That's what makes me happy. Because they just overdo it with the salt. They really do. Temperature right now is 40 degrees. That's the thing, and the sun is out. So these are the things that take care of your snow situation. But this car has a very firm ride, and I like the riding on it, as I have mentioned. Or if I haven't mentioned it, it means that part of this particular review is it's floating around in cyber limbo somewhere, i.e. the cutting room floor. But I'll tell you, I do like the handling of this car. And again, we got to come back to the fact, with this turbocharged 2-liter and the electric motor, we have 555 horsepower at maximum, and that is quite a bit of horsepower for a car that weighs 4,410 pounds. That's what it weighs. Not a light car, but not an overly heavy car, but with 455 horsepower. And right now we still have a little bit of our pure electric going for us. It is my plan to try to plug this thing in when I get home, but I tell you what, electric rates are so high right now that, and it'll take quite a while for it to completely charge, because all I have is, we have our lowly 120 volt. 120 volt. We don't have 220, except to our dryer. And I don't want to try to plug this into the dryer, because then it'll get off, you know, all the lint and everything everywhere. But just at a 110 house current, it'll take you overnight, but it will fully charge it overnight. In other words, if you're commuting, let's say you do get, let's say it's a nice summer day here, and you do get right around 40 miles of all electric power, and you your workplace is, let's say, about 20 miles away. So you get to work, then you get back after the end of the day, and your electric is pretty much depleted. But you can plug it in, and next morning it should be fully charged, and you can do it again. So you'll end up using very little actual fuel. But like I say, here in the wintertime, everything has changed. Your range is dramatically reduced for a variety of different factors involved that. But you also, the engine will run more because it's warming up the cabin and warming up itself. So that if you do jump on the gas all of a sudden because you want to go fast for whatever reason, that will be available to you, and the engine will be warmed up so the emissions will be acceptable and all that kind of stuff. So this is the world you live in if you have these things that you have to deal with. And that's something worth thinking about. I don't mind telling you. But again, not a lot we can do. There's not like a comfort setting for the suspension that I'm aware of. I've looked and I haven't seen it. So that's fine. It's just, when I say it's firm, but it's not harsh. You will feel, if you go down a road that's got a lot of, let's say it's got a lot of cracks and things in it, like this one does, you will feel them, but at the same time, it's an interesting feel because it's firm, but yet it's not quite punishing. It's right on the edge. If it was a little harsher, it would be punishing, and people would complain about the ride on this car. But it's not quite there. And so much of this depends on your tires, by the way, especially when it comes to smaller road irregularities. The tires on this vehicle are such that I personally feel like whenever you start going over 18 inches on especially something like a car, you're starting to enter the realm where you're doing more for appearance sake than you are for actual performance, just because that's the way it is. The larger the wheels, usually the less actual tread, or I should just say less fat the tire is. This guy's gonna pull some shenanigans on us. He's gonna stop so he can get his thing out there, and I'm gonna go around him because I have all this power on tap. There we go. But the tire is actually a lot thinner as compared to having a smaller wheel and more tire. And what happens with that is there's good and bad things with that. Now, the big reason people have been saying for a long time high performance wheels are larger so that you can put bigger brake calipers on there. But there's all kinds of things you can do just with offsets that you don't need to have larger wheels in order to have larger brake calipers. You just don't. You just engineer around it. But because larger wheels have become so fashionable, that's been a big tug to everything. And all these car companies, no exceptions, look at what they perceive to be what people want, what's popular, what's the thing these days. And they take that and run with it. And so we've seen a consistently larger wheel being put on just about every vehicle out there. There's some exceptions, and trucks, I still say the magic number for trucks, most light trucks, as in pickups and SUVs, the best numbers, an 18-inch wheel. I still believe that, but because you compromise some things. It's good to see we don't. There we go. There's our flag person, and he's waving me on, like they do on them aircraft carriers. You know, when they tell that fella that girl that's flying that jet fighter plane that go, you go. Yeah, that's what these guys. I need to talk to them. I need to talk to these flag people and say, you need to start doing some of that flight deck on aircraft carrier stuff that they do when they tell them to take off. That's cool stuff there. That's some dance. That's one of the few places in warfare where they introduce the dance. The dance is cool. Well, I'll tell you what, if we get all these winds, what is it? April comes in like a lion and leaves like a lamb or something like. Well, we ain't April yet. It will be soon, however. Before you know it. But we are really getting the windy weather lately, and it's one of the biggest. It doesn't mean much from a driving standpoint, except for the fact that so much of the time up here, you just got to keep your eyes open for stuff flying out in the road. Not just tree branches and stuff like that, but debris. You know, a lot of people drive these pickup trucks, and in the cargo area, they have left a bunch of debris. And it ends up in the middle of the road when you're driving along. So you got to watch for that. And this is a real good car for that, because it can dart from side to side with great alacrity. Boy, I hope that's the right word. I hate using the wrong word. Incidentally, I was asked by a friend of mine the other day. I have a website that I've had for years that I've never had time to really maintain. They said, "Why don't you fire that thing back up?" Interesting question. Maybe I will. We'll see. I got irons and fires, and if it works out, I'll do it. After all this talking and talking and talking, at last it is revealed. One of my favorite rear suspensions is found on this S60. It doesn't have a coil spring, it doesn't have an air spring, it has a transverse mounted leaf spring, which is the coolest thing ever. And as you can see, it mounts right there, that big yellow thing, because my device is not working. Oh well, that's life, I guess. It is mounted to this lower A-arm, which appears to be aluminum in construction, and it runs all the way across to the other side. So there we have one spring, a composite material, and that's it. There's no coils or anything else. The shock absorber is mounted up in there, as you can see. I don't detect any type of switching on there, so I don't guess when you go into the sport mode if anything happens. That would usually be what would happen, is there would be a change in the response of the shock absorber. But all I know about this is I read it and it says it was made in Poland and it's gas charged. So there you go. But anyway, this we have also a front locator beam right there that appears to be made out of metal instead of aluminum. And up in there we have our drive shaft. Now here's another interesting thing about this suspension and this drive system for the all-wheel drive system in the rear, is this appears to be electric totally. So this is our electric motor, I guess, because I see no drive shaft running to it, and I do see an electrical cable running to it. And as you saw earlier in the engine compartment, we had most of the control systems for the electric side of things is up there. But the differential appears to be similar to something like a RAV4, where the rear, RAV4 hybrid, I should say, which is the rear drive system is completely isolated from the front and is 100% electric, meaning that it would be operated through microprocessors and doing all of its magic on its own without any help from the gas engine. Here's a little bit better shot of that lower control arm, which is quite beautiful, this aluminum. And there's our little old leaf spring. And it seems to work very well. The ride, like I said, is pretty, I wouldn't say stiff as much as firm, but it offers excellent control. And when you go over really rough stuff, it seems to do a very nice job. It also seems to have a fair amount of travel to it. So all these things combined, and I would imagine the unsprung weight, and the unsprung weight is very important because the lighter the suspension components that are bolted to the wheel, the faster the suspension can usually respond, because it's not dealing with all that additional mass and inertia that makes it slower in its response to bumps. So that's another advantage to having these transverse mounted leaf springs that are made out of a, I would assume, lightweight composite material. So if we look forward, we see that it's very flat underneath there, both for aerodynamic reasons and there's a bit of protection there. Now I'm wondering, I think somewhere up in there is where you will find our lithium-ion battery, and I'm assuming it's lithium-ion because it really doesn't say. It just says it's 18.5 kilowatts or whatever. And most vehicles like this tend to put the battery either underneath the cargo area or underneath the rear seat. But I have not yet ascertained exactly where Volvo puts the battery, and I'm thinking it may be more amidships, somewhere up in there in the middle part, which would originally have been occupied by like a drive shaft going to the rear motivation, i.e. the rear differential. But since this is electric and self-contained, that could be a probable place to put the battery. I'm going to work on finding out. A lot of times things with Volvos are not as clear-cut, and getting answers can be also a bit more involved, let's put it that way. But anyway, this is still one of my favorite rear suspensions on any vehicle because it's kind of unique and it's very, very interesting, and there's a lot of elegant engineering involved with this, which I say involved as in Volvo. They do a lot of really innovative engineering. So there you go. That's our S60 out back underneath with a beautifully mounted transverse leaf spring. Well, there we have it. Here is our 2025 S60 T8 all-wheel drive plug-in hybrid Ultra from our friends at Volvo. So what do I think of this car? Well, for a compact, it's got a decent amount of room in it. I got about 33 miles per gallon using one plug-in session with the plug-in hybrid part, and it drives great. Very firm suspension, but great handling, and it did very, very well in the snow that I experienced while I had it. So you got all these things going for you, plus all that horsepower. And by the way, I should point out, if I didn't make this clear before, that the front drivetrain is the gasoline engine power drivetrain, and the rear drivetrain is the electric motor drivetrain, and they work in concert to propel you along at great velocities. So there you go. It's a fine, fine compact from a company that you can trust because they're real big on safety. And speaking of safety, you be safe out there. See you next time.
Do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube, you eat like the tube, you raise your children like the tube, you even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.